Welcome to Market Masterclass this Monday, 23rd of October. And this week we're going to look at 5 economies in the economy of the country of New Zealand, which is in the South Pacific Ocean, the southwesting part of the ocean, and it's very much linked into the Australian economy in many ways. But it's rated to be the 53rd largest economy in the world, according to the GDP ratings, gross domestic product ratings, and it's one of the most globalized economies as far as international trade goes. It does most of its business with Australia, China, USA, the Economic Union, South Korea, Japan, and Canada. The service sector, interestingly enough, makes up 63% of the GDP. So we're going to look at 5 economies. We're going to look at, starting in the north of the North Island. There's 2 main islands. In the north of North Island, we're talking about the city of Auckland. Then we're sliding down a little bit in the North Island to Hamilton. Then we're going to the southwestern tip of the North Island, which is the capital city of Wellington. And then we're going to the South Island. The biggest city on the east coast there is Christchurch, and way down in the southeastern corner is Dunedin. So we're going to start today with Auckland. Auckland, it's the economic and commercial powerhouse of New Zealand. It's got 1.65 million people living there, which interestingly enough is 34% of the total population in the country. 13% of the population in Auckland are Maoris, the indigenous original population there. Another interesting fact, 39% of the people in Auckland are estimated to have been born overseas. It's a country ranked first in the world for the ease of doing business, the whole country. And in Auckland we've got 100 plus multinational companies based here. It's the heart of New Zealand technology, commercial services, food and beverage, processing sectors. It's the number 1 airport in the country. You've got 28 airlines with something like 2 million people coming in a year, and it's got a major container port. 1 million containers per annum. 30% of all New Zealand exports come into Auckland, and 61% of all imports come in. So exports 32% out, 61% imports in. It's made up of primary, like agricultural, manufacturing, secondary and tertiary services industries. It's rated to be the 4th most diverse city in the world, after Dubai, Brussels and Toronto. Unemployment is reasonably high, actually, at 4.7% in Auckland. 48% of the population is highly skilled. The GDP is growing at about 3.4% per annum, which is pretty healthy. In terms of exports, they reckon there are $12 billion in exports. The GDP is annual is rated to be about $84.8 billion. And there's an estimated 184,000 registered businesses in Auckland itself. On the creative side, you've got screen and music and gaming industries, which contribute something like 2.8 billion towards the GDP. They employ something like 30,900 people, and there's 9,995 businesses in this area. In terms of screen, that's film, TV, animation, gaming, virtual reality. Revenues estimated to be 2.39 billion. Employment 6,800 people. Businesses 1,278 businesses. Tourism. Employment 60,500 people. Tourism spending is estimated to be $7.5 billion. The GDP in terms of revenue is 2.77 billion. So international education is pretty important. Construction is pretty important. So the economy is doing, it's got some pretty important areas. Exports, going back to exports, 51% of exports go to Australia, China and USA between them. Then the others distributed Japan, UK, Germany, Singapore, Korea, Malaysia and Canada. Multinational companies you will have heard of which operate in Auckland are Oracle, Vodafone, Microsoft, Unilever. So these are pretty important companies. There are currently 88 current construction projects going on in Auckland. So the economy is booming quite nicely. The technology sector, GDP contribution is something like 7.8 billion, employment 48,000 people, and something like 8,900 businesses in that sector. Commercial services contribute $17.7 billion to the GDP, employs 178,000 people, and 47,300 businesses in commercial services. We said how important services are in the overall economy. Food and beverage, GDP $3.3 billion, employment 29,000 people, businesses nearly 2,800 businesses. So a lot of businesses going on. The economy is thriving. It's by far the largest city in the whole of New Zealand, and in this country where international trade is incredibly important. So that's Auckland for you in the very north of the North Island. Hope you found that useful and interesting. Bye for now.